Let's have a session on if recruitment is the most important activity of the human resource management functional area, human resources. HR. We'll start with the first thing. So yes, why recruitment is probably the most important activity? Well, the quality of your recruitment and selection will probably lead to a better long-term performance of your employees and therefore your organisation. Now, if you flip it the other way, if you have poor recruitment for your organisation, you've got the wrong people in the jobs, then that's likely to lead to lower labour productivity. Now, use your chains of analysis here. Lower labour productivity will lead to higher labour cost per unit, and that's a problem for a business. As well as the fact that if you have the wrong people, you've recruited poorly, wrong people in the wrong role, they may well leave. So you're likely to get a higher labour turnover. A higher labour turnover will probably, in the long term, increase your recruitment costs. So both of those points are problematic if you recruit poorly, therefore making it the most important feature, most important activity. Now that will probably both lead to reduced profits, sad face. Second thing to think about here is other activities of HRM. That could be training, it could be motivation. Well, they're likely to be less effective as activities of the human resource functional area if you recruit poorly. So you need to recruit well to support these other two. And HR theorists, we're thinking Maslow, we're thinking Herzberg, we're thinking Taylor, would support this, but in different ways. Maslow, thinking about hierarchy of needs, will probably think that if you recruit to higher needs, nearer to self-actualization, you're more likely to achieve self-actualization with your employees, and that will probably lead to a very motivated, huge labour productivity of your workers. Now, Herzberg would say that if you recruit well, you'll get those workers that find meaning. They want a meaningfulness in their work. They're more likely to achieve. If they're more likely to achieve, they're more likely to be recognised. If they're more likely to be recognised, then that's going to be a motivator within the two-factor theory. Now, Taylor would be thinking about matching the person to the role, matching the skill of the person to the role. And if you do that, you will maximise productivity. Now, the third thing is that if recruitment is the most important part of the HRM function, it might well depend upon which is the most important objective of the organisation. Now, if you're thinking about diversity, one of the human resource objectives, well, if that is the most important objective of HR, then probably recruitment is the most important activity to get an inclusive workforce. Now, secondary to that, if you're thinking about the number of employees, the skill of employees, the location of employees, then if you're trying to get the right people in the right place, well, with the right skill, well, then recruitment probably is the most important activity of the functional area that is HR. But that doesn't work with other HR objectives. It might be that employee engagement is your most important objective. Well, in that case, I'd suspect recruitment isn't the number one priority there. It might be employee-employer relations. Likewise, if you're in a fast-changing industry, you're probably looking to continuously upskill your employees. You're thinking about post-recruitment upskilling here, and then training probably is the most important activity in that case. So it depends upon the human resource objective. Now, on the no side, if you're thinking about human resources activity, there's other areas apart from recruitment which may well be the most important. The first one is motivation. Clearly, the more motivated your staff, the higher labour productivity, the lower labour cost per unit, the lower labour turnover. That's going to be all great for your business. Now, remember, you'll be using financial or non-financial methods of motivation to try and increase the motivation of your employees. Now, secondly, as mentioned earlier, training. If you want to train your employees, you're going to upskill, you're going to make your business more competitive, increasing the competitiveness of your business, particularly important, as I mentioned earlier, in a fast-changing industry. And that's especially if you're thinking about the business and its products and which stage of the product life cycle they are in. If they're in the growth stage, well, then probably training is going to be particularly important. You could fight back here against recruitment because you could think recruitment won't be the most important activity of the HR function or area if the business is in the decline stage of the product life cycle. Why? Because they're probably thinking about redundancy, not recruitment at that point. Now, secondly is employee-employer relations, employee relations, and here you're probably thinking about avoiding disputes with work councils, with trade unions, which could give you legal ramifications. So you want to be legally compliant. So that might be the most important activity for HRM. Now, the fourth one to think about is the organisational structure. The org structure, we're thinking functional, matrix, regional, product-based. Now, that might be the most important activity of HR. In terms of large businesses, if it's the clarity of the role, responsibilities associated with that, which are really, really important, then functional areas will make sense. If you're a project-based business, maybe a consultancy, and you want to maximise your ability to coordinate your staff, perhaps because you might have two reports in terms of your role, well, then a matrix structure may make most sense. So therefore, it's most important that you focus on that as HR. If you're a multinational company, an MNC, well, then you might want to balance the local autonomy to make that localized decision making with overall control from the top of the business. Well, then regional structures might make most sense. If you're a large business and you've got lots of product lines, well, then clearly a product-based organisational structure might make most sense, and therefore, whatever situation you're in there, the org structure, the organisational structure is the most important activity for HR. I'll see you at the next sesh.